Let's get started with the project. So the first thing we did was obviously design a speaker enclosure that I liked and that I wanted in my home. This was the shape that I settled on. Again, it's not revolutionary, but it's not your standard box either. It's just something in between. It's something that adds a little bit of style while not being overly complicated as well. So the first part of our build is let's just get this box built.
Unfortunately, because I started this project a bit before I started filming, we're going to just recap kind of how we got to the point that we're at right now. So originally we came up with a design. We've kind of talked about where that design came from. And so I originally drew it out on a piece of 1/2-inch MDF, refined the shape, cut it out, and then used an edge sander to get it nice and symmetrical. We then drilled the 3 holes that will be the pilot holes that will help us line everything up moving forward. We took this template and then we traced it onto another sheet of MDF, cut it out, or double-sided taped it, drew around it, cut it out roughly on the bandsaw, went around it with the router to get the final shape, drilled our holes, and then came back and we made an interior line, right? Cut most of that out with a jigsaw, refined it with a router, and then with some sanding to get the shape we were looking for. Then we used these 2 as templates to then go on and mill out all of the rest of the parts that would then ultimately make up the speaker cabinet. And so what we get when we do that is a series of hollowed out rings with a solid back and a solid front and an empty cavity. And this is the solid cavity version, both the front and the back. They're already glued on. Here's the final front piece that will go on here, and we'll get that put on. And then from there, we'll go on to veneering the boxes and finishing them out. And then lastly, we'll come in, drill all the holes, mount our drivers, and then we'll test them out and see how well they work. So now that we got our boxes all glued up, the next step is to go through and sand them real well. Make sure that we get a nice, smooth, consistent, level surface across the entirety of the box so that when we put our veneers on, they're going to stick well, they're going to look well, there's not going to be any bumps, irregularities in the outside of the veneer. So I'm going to start with an 80 grit sandpaper just to even everything out. So as you can see right here, this is what we're looking for. These 2 seams, these seams are coming together nicely. You're getting a nice flat surface that the veneer will adhere to. However, you can see this seam right here there's a little bit of a ridge here. And so we're just gonna keep sanding. We get rid of those ridges, get a nice smooth surface all the way around. And now that we got the rough sanding done and we got it shaped to make sure that all of our seams are lining up nicely, we're gonna come back and hit it pretty good with 120 grit hand block so that we can make sure that if we happen to get any flattening or the power sanding left any marks, and maybe you can kind of see it there, there's a little bit of a ridge right there. We want to smooth that ridge out. And I find that doing this by hand is just the best way to make certain that I'm getting the nice, smooth curves, smooth transitions that I'm looking for. Okay, we got our boxes all sanded up. Everything's nice and even. It's got a good finish on it, ready for the veneer.
So let's go over some of the tools and products we're going to be using with the veneer. And I'll show you the veneer in a minute, and I'm really super excited about it. The company that sent it out did a fantastic job, and it's absolutely beautiful, and I hope you guys like it. We've got a pair of scissors, which in some cases may be your best option for cutting a veneer. We also have a small veneer saw. Also have a glue application roller. It's not a hard roller like a J roller. It's not hard plastic, but it's a very dense foam that can be washed and reused. You can get some good down pressure with it, but it also works very well for spreading the glue at the appropriate thickness. Now the glue I'm going to be using, I'm really excited about trying. As many of you all may know, there's a multitude of ways to attach veneers. Some veneer comes with PSA or pressure sensitive adhesive already applied on the back of it, and essentially it operates like a peel and stick veneer. Also very popular is contact cement. My concern with that was with these complex curves, I felt like the opportunity or possibility of getting excessive bubbles or difficulty getting it applied or having it accidentally stick someplace I don't want it to stick when there's a lot of pieces in motion might be difficult. If it was a great big flat surface, contact cement I think would be a wonderful option, but not the one I went with. And then of course some people use regular wood glues and veneer glues and put the whole thing in a vacuum bag and vacuum it down. Again, I think that would be very difficult with these shapes, and I don't have a vacuum pump or vacuum bags. So I felt really excited when I came across this product called Heat Lock. It's an iron-on veneer adhesive. So if any of you all have ever used edge banding that irons on, this glue essentially will allow me to create a giant iron-on out of the veneer. And so you put a healthy layer of the glue on the veneer as well as on the outside of the cabinet. You let both dry for about 20 to 30 minutes. According to the instructions, best not to let it set for more than 3 hours. And then you use a clothing iron or a heat iron, and you slowly iron the veneer on. As you heat up a section of it, the glue sort of liquefies again, and very quickly as it cools, those two pieces will then bond together. Again, exactly like edge veneers, if you've ever used any iron-on edge veneers. So I'm really excited about this product. People seem to like it. I've seen it used in other speaker veneering, and I think with these complex curves, it's going to be the perfect solution for us. Then lastly, I have a small bottle of what's called Super Soft, and this is just to help add some flexibility or pliability to the veneer itself. And so we're really only going to apply it as we get up to the tops of the cabinet. As that veneer starts to bend to come over, we're going to just take a rag that's been dampened with this and wipe it on the veneer so that as we bend it, it helps to increase the flexibility of the veneer at this point of sharpest bend. So again, I've never done this. I'm super excited about it. I'm sure I'm going to make some mistakes along the way, and you'll be there to watch me and hopefully learn a little bit about from the mistakes that I make. So let's get going. Okay, before we go much further with the veneering, I wanted to show everyone the veneer that I'm going to be using on this project. This is a quarter sawn zebra wood, and now it comes sanded directly from the mill with a final sanding of about 150 grit. So it's a little bit duller, obviously, than it's going to be once we have some finish on it. But wow, just look at that grain pattern. I think this is going to be beautiful. It's going to make a really nice addition to the speakers, and I'm super excited to see what this is going to look like once we get it on there. Okay, so we've got our speaker box, we got our paper vat veneer. The first thing we want to do is cut the veneer down to where it's just about a 1/2 inch overhang on each side. And what I've already done is sort of, if we take this and line up say the middle of the bottom with the edge of the veneer, and we just kind of rolled it along, we'll see that we've got probably about 3.5 or 4 inches extra. And so I think what we want to do is leave that long, start ironing it on around,
and then come back at the end and trim it to try and get as perfect of a seam as we can right down the middle of the bottom. Figure that's the best place to put the seam. If we do make any mistakes, if it's not a perfectly straight line, if the seam doesn't come together well, it's going to be pretty much hidden from anybody that's going to see the speaker. So I think that's what we're going to do. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of get a rough, I think I'm going to leave roughly about a 1/2 inch overhang on each side to make sure we've got a little extra veneer. We're just going to mark a little line right there. And then we're going to come up and kind of get a good reference line. And then what the instructions encourage is that you tape this down prior to applying the glue. And so you just want to grab the edge a little bit and tape this in place. Now, you're going to eventually come back and cut this off. But it does a few things here that I found, and I found it certainly to be true on the test pieces that I did, just kind of getting ready for this is, one, you want to make certain that you don't get any of the glue on the face of the veneer. And so this just certainly helps to ensure that that does not happen. The other thing though it does is, obviously this glue contains some moisture, and as you probably know, veneers will have a tendency to, or at least have the potential to buckle a little bit as they get moist, and you want to keep this laying flat. In the end, you're going to want to put about 2 coats of glue on this, and so you don't want to be moving it, you don't want to be handling it, and this just provides a really nice way to keep it in place, keep it steady, and allows you to spread the glue on nice and evenly without having to worry about any getting on the face of the surface. Okay, now we're going to get the glue on the veneer. Much easier process probably than the box because this is a nice flat surface. Again, we want enough glue without having too much glue. Forgot to mention before when I was doing the box, but I think it's probably pretty self-evident as well. You want to really make sure you get out to the edges on the piece. As with any veneer, that's going to be your most likely to be your problematic areas, right, or along the edges. And what you don't want is you don't want your edges coming loose and starting to pick loose, because that's where you'll get real problems with your veneer. Obviously, once you get an edge come loose, the likelihood of it pulling up becomes much greater at that point. So again, both on this piece, but especially on the work piece, because we're going to overhang here, but especially on the work piece, you want to make sure you're getting that glue, nice coverage all the way out to the edge of the piece that you're going to be veneering. My first coat's dry at this point, so we're going to go in and put on a second coat. As you can see, you can touch it. It's not sticky. It's not, you're not wanting to adhere to it. This next coat, we're not going to put quite as heavy a coat on this time. Again, we're just trying to make certain we get a good covering of our glue onto our workpiece. And as I said before, when I was doing the veneer piece itself, we really want to make certain that we're getting it all the way to the edge of our workpiece. That's what's going to really ensure that our veneer has a good bond and that our our veneer is going to stick really well and not have a tendency or desire to peel up in the future. Taken my little ruler and I've sort of made a line down the middle that's perpendicular to the sides, just in an effort to sort of at least get a straight line to begin with. And so as you can see, it doesn't stick, unlike contact cement, which would really be difficult, I think, in a situation like this because of its tendency to want to stick probably. The thing we got to kind of make sure of is that we're getting a good straight start on this. We've got our iron, it's heated up. We'll come in here and start right here and on this bottom flat. And heat that. Again, very much like edge banding, which is really nice, I think, in this scenario. Get this first line stuck down really well. It's like edge banding. You don't want to burn your veneer, but you want enough heat in there that you're getting a good stick, right? So I think we're accomplishing that. Maybe a little more on this corner over here. And they do say that if you get to the end and you let it dry and cool completely and you find that you have a bubble somewhere, that you can come back after the fact and correct that bubble. You can come back up to even 2 or 3 hours later and heat that area and stick it. I'm going to take some of this super soft. You can kind of see that right through here is where we're going to want to bend that. So I'm going to spray it on. I'm also going to wipe it right back off. So I don't want a lot of moisture in there. I just want enough of that chemical to get in there to soften that grain up when we get up to that top. Okay, so you can see we don't have a perfect seam. There's a little bit of a gap there. But I'm really pleased with that. I mean, considering this is going to be the bottom of the speaker, not to mention when we come in to finish sand all of this, we might even put a little glue across the seam and do a little sanding. We'll get a little sawdust embedded in there, help color match it. And I think in the end, other than you and Me, nobody's ever gonna know that it's there because it'll be hidden, it'll be out of sight, nobody's gonna be seeing it. So the next thing we've got to do though, is we've got to come around, we want to trim this so that it is flush. Doing it with just a razor blade. I'm gonna try that first and make sure it doesn't, want to run too much with the grain. But I think you can literally lay this blade just flat in here and come around and make a series of low pressure cuts. Okay, so here we are. Went around with the razor blade. We got all those cut down. And I think what we would do next is we're going to come back and just hit it real lightly with sanding sponge. Got our Festool 120 sanding sponge. We'll come back and we'll just go around. We'll hit this and kind of get this down even with the edge. Now, you all can see here, these are the things I was really kind of concerned about. You can see this little gap here. I don't know that this is the veneer or that I don't even know that, I can't say that it's because I did necessarily a poor job. So much as what I believe is going on there is because this was all hand shaped for the most part, there may be just a slight dip there. So I am going to come back in with the iron here. I'm going to see if we can get that to stick. That would be the ideal solution here, I think. And that seems to have worked real well. You can see that gap closed right up. And so we'll go around the edges now that we've got it trimmed back and we can see our edges really well. We'll go back and we'll close up any of these little gaps that happen to be right along the edge to make sure we got really good edge seal all the way around, because that's, again, the point of greatest likelihood of failure for veneers. I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope that was helpful to somebody maybe out there that's never done it but was thinking about doing it themselves, and I'm really excited to see some finish on these and get the fronts and the backs done as well. So stay tuned. So now we are ready to veneer one of the face panels, back panel. I guess at this point they're interchangeable. So what we're going to do is take our veneer, I'm going to trace a loose pattern, oversized pattern for one of these surfaces. We'll cut it out, get them taped down, we'll apply our glue and iron them on. Okay, so we got the veneers finished up on the outside of the boxes. You can see the sides are nicely done. Trust me when I tell you the fronts and the backs are done. I'll leave that for the bigger reveal. But I just put tape on the fronts and the backs, covered them so that when I'm continuing to work on them around the face, I just don't want to scratch anything up. Don't want to damage the veneer in any way. So it just seemed like a good safety precaution to take. So I'm going to wrap up part one there. We got the boxes completed and the veneers on. I hope you'll come back for the second part of this build, where I'll complete the grille screens, get some finish on these speakers, and last but not least, get the drivers installed. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and as always, I would super appreciate if you would like and subscribe if you're interested in future content from Shoshin Woodworking. Take care, everybody.